Great to see everybody. Practice 7 today. So we'll be in full pads, tackle a little bit, and pick it up where we left off Saturday morning. So a little bit muggy. Got to hydrate. Take an extra water break in today in practice. So that's where we are right now. Questions?
Talk to Jeff Jones. It's kind of a, I don't want to say weird, but a dynamic where I don't think a lot of coaches have their high school coach as a member of their staff. What's your relationship, been with him the last 2 decades, and what's it like having him in the room?
Yeah, Coach Jones was a huge part of me getting into coaching. Really somebody I looked up to early. He used to pick me up, take me to workouts. A little bit of a knucklehead maybe at that point in my life, and a lot of those same lessons I learned when I was in high school, I still use in terms of being able to teach young guys and paying it forward. But he's a guy that gave more of himself than he took from the game, took from his players, and is a guy that when I graduated gave me my first job coaching high school ball. And so he's a huge reason why I coach. He's a huge reason why I wanted to be a teacher. He's been through a lot of this with me in terms of he was at my wedding, been at every stop that I've gone to. He's always came as a fan. And then a couple of days after I took the job, I called him and said, hey, will you come down here and do what you did for me for these guys here? And he literally was on his way down. So 30 years in education in the state of Ohio, and he's a couple years away from retirement. He dropped everything, and he was a principal at the time, dropped everything and came down to Tampa. So really grateful for him being here. What he does for our kids is monumental in terms of director of player development. I mean, he's like part principal, part teacher, part friend, part psychiatrist, part accountability buddy. I mean, and every situation's different, but I lean on him in a really, really heavy way. He's also somebody the players lean on, knowing that, hey, he doesn't control their playing time. They can go to him with an issue, and nobody's going to look at him sideways. In 30 years, coach has seen just about everything that can happen. And he filters me in a lot of ways in terms of, what do I actually need to know and what do I not? But he's also for me, a lot of situations you come up with as a first-year head coach and hey, how would you do this? And he won't give you his opinion unless you ask for it, but generally when I ask for it, he knows I need it. So priceless, I guess, in a lot of ways would be the answer.
Positive that you've seen through about half spring ball now?
Yeah, biggest positive, I would say the attitude, the effort that the guys are coming out with. And I've commended them all but one day on the intent of what we're trying to do is right. For everything we're doing, it's the first time. The organization of practice, how we move from drill to drill, what the expectation is of every drill. We tackled for the first time last Thursday. We taught tackling. We're going between tackling periods and thud periods. How are we communicating that? We're putting together some long drives on the offensive side of the ball. How do we communicate how we're substituting? What's the defense do when the offense substitutes? When I tell you, you're coaching the smallest little things. So I think with that comes a little bit of anxiety from the guys. I feel like my job as the head coach is to lessen the anxiety and let them just go play. But I think the intent, the attitude, the effort of which they're coming out with has been really relatively elite.
I wanted to ask you about one of the small things that Todd Orlando was saying the other day, that you guys, there's a specific way the center likes to receive the ball so he can grip it faster and snap it. What's the right way to do that?
Yeah, I would classify that in a trade secret category that I got to talk to Todd about talking. But that would go under the fine details of everything that you're doing is how the center needs the ball received so he can snap it that much faster. trying to play fast.
It's just something I've never thought about. Like, is that something you have to talk to the rep about and how he's supposed to handle the ball?
Trade secret. You wouldn't think about it because you don't sit in a room all day thinking about it, right? You're trying to be elite at your job, so you're doing a good job. Yeah, well, think about the detail. I mean, that's what years and years of trial and error. Those are the little details that you come to in terms of, man, like if the center doesn't have to spin the ball every time, can it be snapped a microsecond faster? But it is a trade secret. If everybody knew the answers, I wouldn't have a job.
Since putting the pads on, how have you seen the team kind of change a little bit? You're so far away from playing, or real camp, so to speak. So how have you seen it just in this last week, the last couple times? At least the guys are able to put the pads on. Does it feel more like football?
Yeah, I think it's certainly. I think this whole time, ever since day 3, and we put at least shells on, it's felt like football. These guys love to play ball. Like for the guys that don't like certain parts of going to school and playing football, when you combine those, they love to play ball. It's a competitive group, which is I said it before. I think when you take a job in this state, these young guys, Florida kids, Georgia kids, they grow up playing ball, and so they like the ball part. They may not like certain parts of the rest of it, but they love the ball part. Well, those guys are fun to coach, so the pads are popping. Sometimes you got to slow them down just a little bit. That's what I was talking about, the transition from period to period and the tempos at which we're going, but they love the ball. The Heat's questioning whether they love the ball. I think when you get to period 20 and 21 and 22 of practice, that's where the mental toughness part has got to come out. And you'll talk to 2 guys today sitting in the back that are playing O-line in the middle of the tempo and the heat and all of that. That's where I think the mental toughness and the pushing through it has got to keep coming. But in terms of putting the pads on it, it's ball. It's fun. That's what it's about.
You guys have been pretty active in terms of trying to make a presence here among high schools and recruiting locally. What have you kind of seen from coaches and recruits so far, a couple months in your tenure in that respect?
I think the biggest thing for the high school coaches in this area is they just want their kids evaluated and want honest feedback. This is the 5th time I've been part of taking over a program. I think the story is literally the same every single time. Man, the local school didn't recruit the local high schools. Those kids all got overlooked, and look at these kids that left and did something, right? Like, it's a scripted deal. And generally whether the job you took over was winning or losing, that's always the story. I respect the heck out of these high school coaches because they are trying to push their kids as well, right? Like, this is a state where you can open and roll at any school you want. So if coaches have young guys that are getting recruited, it certainly helps them recruit. They're not doing anything drastically different than what we're doing in terms of making sure that they've got the best players to have the best team. So it's been a very grassroots approach in recruiting, especially locally. I mean, I hit as many schools as I could when I got here. We as a staff, the 6 counties around where we are, we tried to hit as many schools imaginably as possible. And that was a huge emphasis. We were still trying to put a class together as well and recruit to make sure we were able to go play. But it was a huge emphasis. After that, I've invited every single coach in this area, and really nationally, come over, hang out, see what we're doing, spend some time with us. You want to learn anything from us? Come on, love to learn something from you guys as well. I think the high school coaches that have come out have seen what we're doing, which is encouraging. They've seen the way we work. They've seen the way we treat our kids. They've seen the intent at which we practice. But I do think it's very grassroots. I think it's literally, it's one phone call at a time. It's one interaction at a time until you establish yourself. And I think even still at that point, it's going to be the same. The recruiting in this area is so competitive. Too easy to fly into Tampa and see 1 million kids without driving very far. So we're right in the middle of it. our job's still the same, keep these kids home. The transfer portal allows us to bring some home that have left. So I think we're a win-win on both sides.
Talked about finding leaders a few weeks ago, not telling somebody they need to lead. How is that a dynamic within the quarterback group? Because you have so many guys trying to become the starter. Bohanna's not doing much, if anything. How is that within the quarterbacks? Then somebody trying to maybe become a leader that they've seen so far.
Yeah, well, Gary is doing everything minus throwing the football. So he was throwing tennis balls yesterday. Like, he's way ahead of schedule and progressing at a really high clip. That competition has been awesome to see. Those guys are competing like crazy, but they're also like supporting each other like crazy. I didn't realize that room was actually as close as they are, especially when you bring in a transfer in Bryce. They've embraced each other. They've embraced the competition. That's a really cool room. Byram has had through 6 days has had as good of a spring as I could have ever asked for. He's grown every day. He's improved every day. He's not making the same mistake twice. He's generally taking care of the football. He's making good decisions. He's 6 days into an offense, and I've been in places where it's catastrophic through 6 days. It is not. Is he operating at a high clip? As close to you can while being on day 6 of an offense. Bryce is right there with him, and they're learning off of each other. I see them talking all the time back and forth, and then you got Gary's taking every single rep in the back, literally 10 yards behind me, and taking the snap, taking the progression, taking the read, his footwork. Like, if you ever watch him at practice, he literally gets more reps than Byron, Bryce, any of those guys. He gets literally 3 times the reps that they get because he's taking them in the back, every single one, with the 1s, the 2s, the 3s. So I think they've been really, really good. It hasn't gotten super real yet because you haven't named a starter. You're not playing a game here for a while. So it's easy. I'm sure when you name a starter, the adversity will hit and the realization of it will set in. We're nowhere near that right now. And they all have some positives. Bullock has some positives. Gunner has some positives. But those guys they're fun to be around right now. They don't feel a whole lot of pressure. They're just going. I think Joel Gordon, Jared Perry, they've done a phenomenal job with those guys. I've left them alone, which I think is probably a benefit too. It was a joke. This group doesn't take it. Screech, we'll get better.